Okay, in this video, we're going to start talking about zero factor property. Now, I cannot emphasize enough how zero factor property is super duper important, and we definitely need to know it. So first, let's write it down. What does it mean? Well, it says that if you have two numbers or two expressions and the product of them is zero, then that means either the first one is zero or the second one is zero. So basically it says if you multiply two things and the answer is zero, that means one of those things has to be zero. So you cannot multiply two numbers, let's say 3 times 5, that's not going to ever give you zero. You just have to have one of them is zero. So either the first one is zero or the second, or maybe even both. That's possible, but that would not be likely. Most of the time they're different, but they could be the same. But this is a very important property that we are going to use factoring to solve equations. So let's start with the first example. Okay, so let's say I have x squared minus 2x, and I want to solve an equation where I make it equal 0. And I need to do that by using factoring. Okay, so before we do anything else, I want to show you how you can find the answers to these things using your calculator. So yes, you're gonna have to do the zero factor property and all of that. Yes, sure, I'll show you that. But I want you to always know what the answer is gonna be, which is really good, right? I mean, you can check all your answers using this calculator, this wonderful TI-30XS calculator. So to use it, you're gonna go to table. So press on table button, enter your function. So x squared, so x is this button right here, then squared minus 2x. Okay, press enter. Then just scroll down with the arrow until you click OK. And what you want is you want to see for which x values is y equals 0. And so you're looking for y's equals 0. And so I can see that that happens when x equals 0. And that also happens, there's one other situation where it's 0, and that would be a 2. So using this calculator, I already solved the question. I know the answers are 0 and 2, okay? But how about we check that out using the wonderful zero factor property? Okay, so first you have to factor. How do you factor a binomial that has an x squared and x? Well, you need to factor the GCF out. What is going to be GCF here? That would be x. Because x can be pulled out of x squared and x could be pulled out of 2x. If I pull out x from x squared, I'm going to have x left. So x times x is x squared. If I pull x from 2x, I'm going to have 2 left. So that's the factoring, that's it, and I make it equal 0. Now the zero factor property says this. If you have two things that are multiplied, so this is thing number 1, and let's say, I don't know which color, how about this one is thing number 2. I have to then make each of them equal 0 and solve that for x. The first one is just x, so x equals 0 is when it's 0. So it's like, when is x equals 0? Well, when x is 0. Okay, so it's a joke, but mathematicians have a weird sense of humor. So anyway, x is 0 when x is 0. Okay, when is x minus 2 equals 0? Well, we can add 2 to both sides, and we will find that x equals 2. So those are your two solutions, x equals 0, x equals 2, which, by the way, surprise, surprise, we got from our wonderful calculator. Also showing you that using Desmos, which I want you to do on activities. If you enter x squared minus 2x, you should see 2 points where this graph intersects the x-axis, and that would be at 0 and that would be at 2. So those are like the x-intercepts. And that again tells me that 0, 2 are the two solutions, okay? Which is just great, right? Okay, so let's do one more example of zero factor property, and we can do more later on. I'm sure I'm gonna do more examples. So let's do something like this. So here we have, you know what, before we do that, let me do one more example real quick on difference of squares. So let's say I have something like x squared minus 4, and I want to solve that and see when that's 0. So maybe I can factor, but before I factor, I want to check it out. I want to see what is the answer, right? So let me show you. Okay, so let's quit out of this. Again, go to table, clear it, put the new one, x squared minus 4. Okay, great. Let's go ahead see when that's going to be 0. Okay, I can see that that y equals 0 and x equals 2, but is that the only answer? Let's kind of scroll up and down. We can see that there's another 0 at negative 2. So, oh yay. So we got two of them. We got 2 and we got negative 2. So we know that that's the answer. But how about we check it by using zero factor property? Well, we've got a difference of squares, and difference of squares can be factored. Remember, it's like a minus b, a plus b. So this is going to be x squared is square of what? Well, that would be x. 4 is square of what? That would be 2. So I've got x minus 2, x plus 2. So zero factor property says, okay, in order for a thing to be equal 0, when you multiply two things together, that means it's the first thing is 0 or the second thing is 0, right? And so that we have x plus 2 equals 0. Okay, so now by adding 2 to both sides, you get x equals positive 2, and then subtracting 2 from both sides, you get x equals negative 2. So those are your solutions. And by the way, they check what the calculator gave you. So in the next videos, I'm going to do a little more examples on zero factor property, but I think for now it's okay.